What if the whispers in the wind were more than just echoes of the night? What if they were calls for help from the past, lingering just beyond the reach of the living? As I settled into my campsite, the familiar crackle of the fire and the twinkling blanket of stars overhead offered comfort, but that night something felt different, charged with an unsettling energy that prickled at the back of my neck. My name is Ethan Parker, a park ranger in the sprawling beauty of Yosemite National Park. For years, I've roamed these majestic trails, feeling more at home among the towering pines and rugged granite than anywhere else. Each corner of this wilderness holds secrets, stories etched into the very fabric of the land. I've always believed in the harmony of nature, but the whispers I'd heard only in campfire tales were about to become a haunting reality as I prepared. My camp, the night unfolded with a velvet hush, the kind that wraps around you like a comforting blanket. Yet, as the shadows deepened, I heard it, a soft, mournful whisper mingling with the rustling leaves. Instinctively, my heart raced. It sounded like a plea, a cry woven into the fabric of the cold night air. I glanced around, half expecting to see a lost hiker or perhaps a curious animal. But the woods remained still, almost too still, as if they were holding their breath. I had heard the legends, stories of lost souls wandering the trails, their fates entwined with the land. Yet I had always dismissed them as mere folklore, fabrications, spun to thrill campers around the fire. But tonight, standing there beneath the stars, wrapped in the embrace of towering trees, I felt an unshakable pull to uncover the source of that voice. I stepped away from the warmth of my fire, the snow crunching softly beneath my boots, drawn towards the darkness that loomed just beyond the reach of the flames. As I ventured deeper into the woods, I stumbled upon an abandoned backpack, its fabric worn and faded. Curiosity gnawed at me as I unzipped it, revealing tattered maps and a photograph of a smiling couple, their faces frozen in a moment of joy. Who were they? What had brought them here? I couldn't shake the feeling that this relic of the past was a breadcrumb leading me further into a mystery I was not prepared to unravel. The air grew chillier and the shadows danced around me as if they were alive. I noticed peculiar markings on the trees, crude drawings that sent a shiver down my spine. They resembled symbols I had seen in old folklore, tales of spirits trapped in the wilderness, forever searching for closure. The weight of their stories pressed in on me, merging with my own memories of loss and longing. Years ago, I had lost someone dear to me, a friend who had vanished in these very woods, leaving behind questions that haunted my every step as I patrolled the trails. The pain of that unresolved grief clawed at my heart, intertwining with this newfound mystery. I could feel the echoes of their presence, a tether between the living and the spirits that lingered just beyond my sight. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. The night fell like a curtain, shrouding the forest in an inky darkness that felt almost alive. As I stood there, the whispers grew louder, swirling around me like an unseen storm. My heart raced. I could no longer dismiss this as mere imagination. The woods were speaking, and I was their unwilling audience. Just as I was about to turn back, I heard footsteps behind me, soft but unmistakable. I spun around, my instincts flaring, and found myself face to face with a young woman, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. She was dressed in hiking gear, her hair tousled, and her cheeks flushed from the cold. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice breaking the tension. "What are you doing out here?" "I could ask you the same question," she replied, her gaze darting around as if she expected something to leap from the shadows. "I'm searching for my brother. He went missing a few days ago." A chill ran down my spine. "Here? In Yosemite?" "Yes." Her voice trembled. "He came to hike the Mist Trail, but he never returned. I've been looking everywhere, and I heard the whispers too. I thought maybe—" Her voice trailed off, and I could see the weight of despair settling on her shoulders. "Maybe what?" I pressed, hoping to keep her focused. "Maybe he's still here, I thought I could find him if I listened closely enough. She paused, her eyes meeting mine. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to scare you. No, you're not scaring me, I said, though I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. I know how it feels to lose someone in these woods. I'm Ethan, by the way. Clara, she replied, extending a hand, I need your help. I can't do this alone. The urgency in her voice struck a chord within me. I had spent years grappling with the loss of my own friend, and now, standing in the darkness with Clara, I felt that familiar ache swell again. The memories flooded back, days spent searching, nights filled with unanswered questions. I nodded, feeling the pull of my own grief merge with her desperation. All right, let's find your brother, I said, the resolve solidifying in my chest. But we need to be careful. The woods can be unpredictable. If the stories are true, we might be dealing with more than just the elements. As we moved deeper into the trees, the atmosphere shifted. The whispers intensified, weaving through the branches like a ghostly lullaby. Clara and I fell into a rhythm, her questions about my experiences mingling with my reassurances that we would find her brother. Yet, as the minutes turned into hours, the shadows began to close in around us. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, a man, disheveled and wild-eyed. He stumbled toward us, his clothes torn and dirty. Help! You have to help me, he gasped, collapsing to the ground before us. Who are you? I demanded, kneeling beside him, my instincts flaring. Lucas, he said, his voice hoarse. I was hiking with my friends. He broke off, his eyes darting nervously. They're gone. Something's out here. It's not safe. Clara and I exchanged a glance, the weight of our reality settling in. This was no longer just about her brother. Something sinister was at play, intertwining our fates with those of the lost souls that roamed these woods. As I helped Lucas to his feet, I felt the air grow heavier, charged with an energy that felt almost sentient. The whispers morphed into an unsettling chorus, urging us to listen, to understand. But I was beginning to realize that the answers we sought might come at a terrible price. Stay close, I said, my voice firm. We're not alone out here. The stakes had risen, and I could sense that we were on the brink of something beyond our comprehension. The mystery awaited us, but so did the shadows of our pasts, eager to reveal their secrets. As Lucas leaned heavily against a tree, panting and trembling, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. I glanced at Clara, who looked just as bewildered as I felt. The whispers had dimmed, but still lingered, a constant reminder of what lurked in the shadows. Lucas, what do you mean something's out here? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. What did you see? He swallowed hard, his gaze darting to the blackness beyond the trees. We were hiking, and then it was like the woods came alive. We heard the whispers too, but they weren't just wind. They were calling to us, luring us deeper. I tried to get us back, but his voice trailed off, and I could see the horror etched on his face. I felt my own heart race as memories flooded back. I had been here before, years ago, chasing the same darkness that had claimed my friend. The whispers had haunted me since that day, but I had always assumed it was the mind playing tricks in the wilderness. Now, standing here with Clara and Lucas, I began to wonder if it was something more sinister. What happened to your friends? Clara's voice broke through my thoughts, her eyes wide with concern. They didn't listen, Lucas said, his voice cracking. They thought it was just a joke. I lost sight of them when they ran off. I tried to call them back, but it was like they couldn't hear me. It felt like the trees swallowed them whole. A chill crept down my spine, and I felt a heavy weight settle in my chest. The woods had claimed lives before, but I had never truly believed in their power until now. I glanced at Clara, whose expression mirrored my dread. What if it's the same thing that happened to my brother? She whispered, as if the thought had just occurred to her. Maybe he's still out there. Maybe he's trapped like Lucas's friends, I said, trying to keep hope alive, but feeling that flicker dim. Suddenly, a rustle in the underbrush made us freeze. I strained to see through the darkness, my breath hitching in my throat. Did You hear that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lucas nodded, fear evident in his eyes. We're not alone. And then from the shadows emerged another figure, a young man, disheveled and gaunt, with wild eyes that mirrored Lucas's. As he stumbled toward us, I felt a jolt of recognition, a memory clawing its way to the surface. Wait, I gasped, my mind racing. You look familiar. The man's gaze flickered between us, confusion and recognition dawning. I'm Ben, he stammered, his voice shaking. I was with Lucas. We were hiking together, and then I lost him. Panic surged through me as I realized that Ben was one of the friends I had searched for years ago when I had lost my own friend in these very woods. The pieces began to fit together in a way that felt almost surreal. No, this can't be happening, I muttered, my mind reeling. Ethan? Ben's voice trembled as he took a step closer. You were looking for your friend. Zoe, I whispered, the name tasting bitter on my tongue. You were with her, weren't you? When she disappeared? Silence enveloped us, thick as the shadows around us. The truth settled in like a stone in my gut. The past was not as far behind me as I thought. It clung to the very trees that surrounded us, intertwining our fates in ways I could never have anticipated. We need to get out of here, Clara urged, her voice shaking. But as I looked into the eyes of the people I had thought were strangers, I realized we were all connected by loss, by the shadows that haunted these woods. The whispers returned, louder now, swirling in a chaotic symphony that echoed my own memories, taunting me with the promise of revelations yet to come. Wait, I said, my voice trembling. What if we're not just here to find the lost? What if we're meant to face whatever has taken them? The atmosphere thickened, and with our shared histories laid bare, I knew the woods would not let us leave without confronting our pasts, and the darkness that had claimed our loved ones. A heavy silence enveloped us, the whispers twisting around our thoughts like vines. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on my shoulders, the gravity of our shared histories pulling us closer to the edge of something profound and terrifying. The air crackled with tension, and I knew we had to make a choice, either confront the darkness or succumb to it. Ethan, Ben said, urgency lacing his voice, if we're going to find them, we have to face whatever it is that took them. We can't just run. His eyes were wild, a reflection of the desperation that mirrored my own. But Clara shook her head, her face pale. What if it's too late? What if we're not strong enough? She was trembling, and I could feel her fear radiating off her. Strength isn't just about power, I replied, trying to anchor us in this moment. It's about confronting our fears together. I turned to Lucas, who was still leaning against the tree, his breath coming in ragged gasps. What do you think? He looked between us, his expression shifting from fear to determination. I lost my friends because I didn't listen to the warnings. I can't let that happen again. He straightened, a flicker of resolve igniting in his eyes. I'll help you face this. I felt a surge of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by the darkness surrounding us. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony that gnawed at my sanity. It's like they're taunting us, I said, fighting the urge to cover my ears. Ben took a step forward, his voice rising above the noise. We need to call them out. We need to confront whatever is watching us, together. The conviction in his voice resonated with something deep within me, a spark of courage I hadn't felt in years, as if in response to our declarations, the shadows shifted and the trees creaked ominously. I could feel the entity lurking just beyond our sight, its presence suffocating and palpable. What do we say? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Let them know we're here, I urged, my heart pounding. Let them know we won't back down. We formed a circle, hands linked, hearts racing. Zoe, I shouted, my voice cutting through. The night. Lucas's friends, we're here to find you. We won't let you go. The whispers intensified, swirling around us in an angry gale, and I could feel the ground tremble beneath our feet. I fought against the rising panic, focusing on the bond between us, the shared grief, the shared purpose, and then Just as the shadow seemed to close in, a voice broke through the chaos. "Ethan, help us." It was faint, but unmistakable. My heart lurched. "Zoe! Zoe!" I cried out, desperation fueling my voice. "Where are you?" The darkness shifted, revealing brief glimpses of figures trapped within the bark of the trees, their faces twisted in anguish. "We're here!" Ben shouted, and suddenly the shadows recoiled, as if our words had struck a nerve. "Stay together!" Lucas yelled, pulling us closer. The ground vibrated, and the whispers turned into a wail, resonating with our shared pain. With every ounce of will I possessed, I stood firm, focused on the faces of my friends, Ben, Lucas, Clara, and the memories of those we had lost. I wouldn't let the shadows take us too. This was our moment, the tipping point, where we could either reclaim what was lost or lose ourselves to the darkness forever. And just as I felt the weight of despair begin to lift, the woods erupted in chaos, the whispers transforming into a deafening roar. The entity was here, and it was time for us to confront it head-on. "Together!" I shouted as the shadows lunged, and I braced myself for the struggle that would determine our fates. The shadows crashed against us like waves, a tumult of darkness and despair. I felt the air thicken, wrapping around my throat as the entity surged forward, a tangible force seeking to devour our resolve. My grip on Ben and Clara tightened, their hands slick with sweat and fear. "Ethan, hold on!" Ben shouted, his voice barely piercing the chaos. I could barely see him through the swirling darkness, but I felt his determination like a beacon. It fueled my own resolve, and I steeled myself, standing my ground as the shadows clawed at my mind. The wail of the entity rose, an echo of the grief that had consumed us since Zoe and Lucas's friends vanished. As the darkness lunged, I thought of Zoe's voice, so faint yet so clear. "Help us!" Those words rippled through me, igniting a fire I didn't know I had. I had to fight, not just for them, but for all of us. "Together!" I yelled again, the word a rallying cry. I could feel the energy shift as we all channeled our fear into something potent. The whispers began to merge into a single, anguished scream, and I felt the shadows recoil, momentarily stunned. I focused on the faces of my friends, their expressions a mixture of fear and fierce determination. Clara's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, while Lucas's jaw was set in grim resolve. The darkness wavered, and in that moment of clarity I shouted, "You don't own us! We're stronger than you think!" The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of rage and pain that reverberated through my bones. I felt a jolt as the energy surged, a wave of light breaking through the suffocating darkness, illuminating the forest in a blinding flash. I shielded my eyes, and when I opened them, the shadows had receded, retreating into the depths of the woods. But the victory came at a cost. My body ached, bruises blossoming across my skin where the darkness had clawed at me. I felt hollow, the weight of the confrontation settling heavily in my chest. I had survived, but the scars, both visible and invisible, would linger long after this night. "We did it," Clara whispered, her voice trembling as she looked around at the now quiet woods. But what happened to them? I turned to the trees where fleeting glimpses of Zoe and the others had been. They were gone, but the air felt different now, lighter yet charged with unresolved energy. "We might have pushed it back," Lucas said, "but it's not over, is it?" As we stood there, panting and bruised in the aftermath, I noticed something glimmering on the ground, a small locket. I knelt to pick it up, recognizing it as Zoe's. My heart sank. "We have to find them," I said, gripping the locket tightly. Ben nodded, though his face was pale, his own wounds evident. "This isn't just about us anymore. We need to figure out what else is lurking out there." The woods, though quiet, now felt like a labyrinth of mysteries waiting to be unraveled. I could feel the weight of our choices pressing down on us, the shadows still lurking on the periphery of our minds. As we turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of something darting between the trees, a flash of movement that sent a chill down my spine. "Did you see that?" I asked, heart racing. Lucas nodded, his expression grim. "We have to go back. We can't just walk away." And with that, I knew our fight was far from over. The mystery of Zoe and the others still loomed large, and whatever had taken them was still out there, waiting. The shadows may have retreated for now, but I sensed we were merely at the beginning of a far darker journey. The shadows crashed against us like waves, a tumult of darkness and despair. I felt the air thicken, wrapping around my throat, as the entity surged forward, a tangible force seeking to devour our resolve. My grip on Ben and Clara tightened, their hands slick with sweat and fear. "Ethan, hold on!" Ben shouted, his voice barely piercing the chaos. I could barely see him through the swirling darkness, but I felt his determination like a beacon. It fueled my own resolve, and I steeled myself, standing my ground as the shadows clawed at my mind. The wail of the entity rose, an echo of the grief that had consumed us since Zoe and Lucas's friends vanished. As the darkness lunged, I thought of Zoe's voice, so faint yet so clear. "Help us!" Those words rippled through me, igniting a fire I didn't know I had. I had to fight, not just for them, but for all of us. "Together!" I yelled again, the word a rallying cry. I could feel the energy shift as we all channeled our fear into something potent. The whispers began to merge into a single, anguished scream, and I felt the shadows recoil, momentarily stunned. I focused on the faces of my friends, their expressions a mixture of fear and fierce determination. Clara's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, while Lucas's jaw was set in grim resolve. The darkness wavered, and in that moment of clarity, I shouted, "You don't own us! We're stronger than you think!" The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of rage and pain that reverberated through my bones. I felt a jolt as the energy surged, a wave of light breaking through the suffocating darkness, illuminating the forest in a blinding flash. I shielded my eyes, and when I opened them, the shadows had receded, retreating into the depths of the woods. But the victory came at a cost. My body ached, bruises blossoming across my skin where the darkness had clawed at me. I felt hollow, the weight of the confrontation settling heavily in my chest. I had survived, but the scars, both visible and invisible, would linger long after this night. "We did it," Clara whispered, her voice trembling as she looked around at the now quiet woods. But what happened to them? I turned to the trees where fleeting glimpses of Zoe and the others had been. They were gone, but the air felt different now, lighter, yet charged with unresolved energy. "We might have pushed it back," Lucas said, "but it's not over, is it?" As we stood there, panting and bruised in the aftermath, I noticed something glimmering on the ground, a small locket. I knelt to pick it up, recognizing it as Zoe's. My heart sank. "We have to find them," I said, gripping the locket tightly. Ben nodded, though his face was pale, his own wounds evident. "This isn't just about us anymore. We need to figure out what else is lurking out there." The woods, though quiet, now felt like a labyrinth of mysteries waiting to be unraveled. I could feel the weight of our choices pressing down on us, the shadows still lurking on the periphery of our minds. As we turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of something darting between the trees, a flash of movement that sent a chill down my spine. "Did you see that?" I asked, heart racing. Lucas nodded, his expression grim. "We have to go back. We can't just walk away." And with that, I knew our fight was far from over. The mystery of Zoe and the others still loomed large, and whatever had taken them was still out there, waiting. The shadows may have retreated for now, but I sensed we were merely at the beginning of a far darker journey. As we ventured deeper into the woods, the air grew colder, and the darkness seemed to pulse around us, alive and hungry. I could feel eyes watching from the depths, a sinister presence lingering just out of sight. Then came a low growl, reverberating through the trees, sending a shiver down my spine. My heart raced, but I pressed forward, determined to uncover the truth. The path ahead twisted and turned, each step echoing with uncertainty, as the shadows loomed heavier than before. In that moment, I realized the entity might have retreated, but it had not been defeated. It was simply biding its time, waiting for the right moment to strike again. And as I glanced back at my friends, I knew we were all teetering on the edge of something terrifying, with no clear resolution in sight. Our journey was far from over. It had only just begun, and the forest held secrets that threatened to consume us whole. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story. What if the untamed beauty of nature was hiding a darkness so profound that it could swallow you whole? As twilight draped its serene cloak over Denali National Park, I, Orrin, the park ranger, felt the weight of that question settle heavily in my chest. The towering pines loomed like ancient sentinels, their shadows stretching long across the ground, whispering secrets I had yet to uncover. I'd spent years here, forging an unbreakable bond with this wilderness, learning to read its signs, the rustle of leaves, the calls of distant birds, the very heartbeat of the forest. Yet lately those rhythms had been disrupted, as if a malevolent force had crept into the heart of this sacred land. As I wrapped up my routine patrol, the gentle chirping of crickets and the soft rustling of the underbrush were replaced by an unsettling noise, hurried footsteps accompanied by a muffled scream that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. I paused, every instinct honed from years of service flaring to life. The sound came from a rarely traveled trail, one I knew like the back of my hand, and yet it felt foreign, tainted. My heart raced as I navigated the winding path, the chill of unease creeping down my spine. What could provoke such fear in a place that had always felt like home? When I finally reached the source of the commotion, the scene that unfolded before me was nothing short of a nightmare. A visitor lay sprawled on the ground, the unmistakable marks of violence etched across his body. Panic surged in my veins. Who would dare commit such a heinous act in this sanctuary of nature? And then my eyes caught sight of it. A deliberate clue left behind, an eerie reminder of the predator lurking in the shadows. It twisted my gut, the realization that someone, somewhere, was using the vastness of this park as a hunting ground. As I knelt by the victim, I felt a familiar pang of dread anchored in my memories. Years ago, I had lost someone close to me in a tragic accident right here, in these very woods. That loss had shaped me, igniting a fire within to protect this land and its visitors at all costs. Yet now I was confronted with the very real possibility that my efforts may not be enough. A series of unexplained incidents over the past months had left the park in a state of chaos, disappearances, unsettling encounters, and whispers of danger. Each time, the same chilling pattern emerged, and now it was my turn to confront the darkness head on, the thrill of the hunt mixed with the bitter taste of fear. I became acutely aware that I was not merely a guardian of this wilderness. I was a player in a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Each clue I uncovered, a barely discernible footprint, a discarded item, an ominous marking on a tree, seemed to taunt me, as if the killer were always one step ahead, watching from the safety of the underbrush. The weight of my responsibility pressed down on me. How far would I go to protect those who ventured into this beauty, knowing that danger lurked just beyond sight? But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. The moment the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest transformed. Shadows deepened, and the familiar sounds of nature morphed into an eerie symphony of rustling leaves and distant howls. I stood up from the scene, my heart pounding in my chest, the weight of the violence I had witnessed pressing heavily on my mind. The world I knew, a place of serenity and beauty, had been tainted by an insidious darkness that seeped into every corner. As I made my way back down the trail, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It was a sensation that prickled at the nape of my neck, and I turned often, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever shadow lurked just out of sight. The adrenaline coursed through my veins, and I fought the urge to run. I had to be the protector of these woods, not a frightened child fleeing in the dark. Upon reaching the ranger station, I was greeted by Sarah, my fellow ranger and close friend. She had a knack for reading emotions, and I could see the concern etched on her face as I entered. "Orrin, what happened out there?" she asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. I recounted the events, choosing my words carefully as I saw her expression darken with each detail. "It's not just an accident, Sarah. There's something or someone out there, and I think they're using the park as their hunting ground." "Are you sure?" she pressed, her brow furrowed. "Maybe it's just a wild animal. You know how the bear population has been fluctuating." "No," I replied, my voice sharper than intended. "This is different. The markings, the way he was left, it's deliberate." I could see the gears turning in her mind, her skepticism wavering. Just then the door swung open, and in walked Marcus, the park's wildlife biologist, his face pale and haggard. "You won't believe what I've found," he said, his breath coming in quick gasps. "I was tracking a bear when I stumbled upon something unnatural. There are signs of a struggle, and not just with animals." "Another attack?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. He nodded, his eyes wide with fear. "And it's not just the wildlife. I found something that looks like a ritual site, hidden deep in the forest. There were remnants of offerings, bones, Orrin, small animal bones arranged in patterns. It felt wrong." "Ritual?" Sarah echoed, her voice trembling. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me, the rational explanations slipping away like sand through my fingers. "We need to investigate," I said, my resolve hardening. "We can't let this continue." Yet, deep down, I struggled with my own demons. The woods had always been my refuge, my home. But now every rustle and snap of a twig felt like a reminder of my past loss, a ghost whispering that I had failed once before. I looked at Marcus and Sarah, their faces reflecting a mix of determination and fear, and I realized I wasn't alone in this fight. We were all bound by a common goal: to protect the sanctuary we loved. As we prepared to venture out, I sensed the stakes rising. Every choice we made could lead to danger, and the forest was no longer a friend, but a complex maze of threats. The tension in the air was palpable, suffocating, and I felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on my shoulders. "Stick together," I instructed, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "We need to be vigilant." With a collective nod, we stepped into the darkness, the trees closing in around us. The air felt charged, as if the very essence of the forest was alive with anticipation, a heartbeat echoing our own. I could no longer dismiss the feeling of being watched. We were now trespassers in a land where the rules of nature had been rewritten, and I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. But as we delved deeper into the woods, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for us, lurking just beyond the reach of our flashlights. It was a sensation that gnawed at my insides, a silent promise that the darkness would reveal itself in ways we could never anticipate. The hunt had begun, and I was about to confront the very heart of the evil that had seeped into this once sacred place. As we trudged deeper into the forest, the shadows seemed to grow denser, wrapping around us like a shroud. Each step echoed with the weight of uncertainty, and I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. The air thickened with a tension I could almost taste, and I had to remind myself to breathe. I was the protector of these woods, yet the very ground beneath me felt like it was shifting, revealing cracks in the reality I had always known. Suddenly, a chilling howl shattered the silence, reverberating through the trees. It wasn't the call of a wolf or any creature I recognized. It felt otherworldly, a sound that clawed at something deep within me. I glanced at Sarah, whose eyes were wide with fear, and Marcus, who had gone pale. We exchanged anxious looks, uncertainty brewing. "Among us, did you hear that?" Marcus whispered, the tremor in his voice betraying his composure. I nodded, my heart racing. We need to keep moving. But just as we pressed forward, I stumbled upon what looked like a small clearing. The moonlight pooled in the center, illuminating the ground in a stark white glow. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the remnants of broken branches arranged in a circle. It felt familiar, like a memory, long buried. "Oren?" Sarah's voice pulled me back to the present, but I was lost in a haze of recollection. I had seen this before, a childhood nightmare that haunted my dreams. It was the same pattern. My brother and I had stumbled upon years ago, deep in these same woods before he vanished without a trace. "Oren, are you okay?" Sarah's voice was closer now, laced with concern. I shook my head, trying to dispel the memories that threatened to overwhelm me. I know this place," I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "My brother and I found something similar here when we were kids. We thought it was a game, but then—" My voice faltered. "Then he disappeared." "Your brother?" Marcus asked, his surprise evident. "I didn't know you had a sibling." "Neither did I," Sarah added, her expression a blend of sympathy and confusion. I felt exposed, like I had peeled back layers of my own psyche. I never told anyone. I thought it was just a childhood fantasy, but now the realization struck me anew. The darkness that had returned to these woods was linked to my past. What if this is happening again? What if whatever took him is still here? Before they could respond, I noticed movement at the edge of the clearing. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in darkness, its features obscured. My heart raced. "Stay back," I shouted instinctively, stepping in front of Sarah and Marcus. "Oren, don't." Sarah's voice was sharp, but I was already moving, adrenaline surging. The figure stepped into the moonlight, and I froze. It was a woman, her eyes glinting with an unsettling mix of recognition and malice. "You've come back," she said softly, her voice echoing with an ancient resonance. "You're just like him." Panic surged through me as the implications of her words sank in. Who was she? How did she know about my brother? I felt the ground shift beneath my feet once more, and the tension escalated to a breaking point. Suddenly, I realized that this was no longer just about the forest. It was personal. The shadows of my past were closing in, and I was about to uncover secrets far darker than I had ever imagined. As the woman's lips curled into a knowing smile, I understood that the hunt had taken on a new meaning, one that intertwined my fate with the darkness lurking within the very heart of the forest. I stood there, heart pounding, rooted to the spot as the woman's gaze bore into me. The world around us faded, the trees leaning in as if they were straining to hear our exchange. "Just like him," she repeated, her voice a haunting melody that echoed through the clearing. He was curious too, unafraid of the darkness. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. I glanced back at Marcus and Sarah, who were frozen in place, eyes darting between me and the stranger. I could sense their worry, their uncertainty, but I had to focus. The woman smiled, a sinister twist of her lips that sent a chill racing up my spine. "I am the keeper of the woods, the guardian of the secrets buried deep within. Your brother was drawn to them, just as you are, but he was more vulnerable." A wave of anger surged within me. "What did you do to him?" I stepped forward, fists clenched, the urge to protect my brother's memory igniting a fire inside me. She laughed, a sound that sent shivers through the air. "I did nothing. He chose to follow the call, just as you are choosing now." Her eyes gleamed with something dark and ancient. "You can turn back, Oren, or you can embrace what you were meant to become." "Embrace what?" I spat, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "You speak in riddles. Just tell me what happened to him." Suddenly, Marcus broke the silence, stepping forward. "Oren, we need to leave. This isn't safe." His voice was a mix of urgency and fear, trying to pull me back from the edge. But the woman's gaze shifted to him, her eyes narrowing. "You would take him from this place? You don't understand the power that lies here. The darkness is alive, and it hungers for those who seek the truth." "Stop!" Sarah shouted, her voice ringing clear and sharp. "We're not afraid of you." She stepped beside me, grounding me in the storm of emotions swirling within. "We're not going to let you manipulate him." The woman's smile faltered for just a moment, her composure shaken. "Ah, but you don't realize the danger you're in. This forest is not just a place, it's a living entity. It feeds on fear, on doubt. It knows your secrets, Oren, just as it knew your brother's." I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet, the weight of her words crashing down on me. "What do you mean?" I asked, the urgency in my voice rising. "What did it know?" "The forest reveals what you hide," she whispered, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial hush. "Your brother's fate is tied to your own. You must embrace the darkness within, or it will consume you, just as it consumed him." In that instant, I felt the air shift around us, thickening like fog. I could sense the power of the forest coiling around me, both alluring and terrifying. The shadows seemed to whisper, urging me to surrender to the dark. "Oren, don't listen to her." Sarah's voice cut through the haze, igniting a spark of defiance in my chest. "You're stronger than this." "Stronger?" I echoed, my mind racing. "Stronger than what? Than the truth?" The woman's laughter filled the clearing, and the shadows danced with her, flickering like flames. "You stand at the threshold, Oren. Make your choice." I felt the weight of their gazes on me, Marcus and Sarah standing resolute beside me. I had to decide, dive into the darkness or fight against it. The choices I made now would determine not only my fate, but that of my brother's memory. With a deep breath, I squared my shoulders, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. "I choose to fight," I declared, my voice echoing through the clearing. "I will not be consumed." But even as those words left my mouth, the shadows surged forward, the ground trembling beneath our feet. The forest was alive, responding to my declaration. And as the woman's knowing smile returned, I understood that this was only the beginning. The true battle was yet to come. The shadows lunged at me, a swirling mass of darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. I braced myself, feeling a surge of power ripple through my veins, but it was nothing compared to the force. Bearing down on us, I fought back, pushing against the darkness, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. "Oren!" Sarah screamed, her voice piercing the chaos. I turned to see her reaching for me, her eyes wide with fear. The darkness was closing in on her, too, and I couldn't let that happen. "Stay close," I shouted, but the words felt futile, lost in the cacophony of rustling leaves and whispered secrets. I could feel the forest's energy pulling at me, trying to drag me into its depths, to merge my essence with its dark heart. "Together!" Marcus yelled, his voice breaking through the haze. He grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her toward me, and the three of us formed a circle, our arms linked as we faced the encroaching shadows. As we stood united, a bright light erupted from the center of our circle, casting the shadows back momentarily. I felt the warmth of my friends beside me, their strength fueling my resolve. The woman's laughter rang out, but now it had a tinge of desperation. "Foolish children," she spat. "You think your bond can save you? The darkness is eternal." But I refused to let her words seep into my mind. "We're stronger together," I shouted, pushing against the shadows, feeling the light within us grow brighter. In that moment, a surge of energy coursed through me, igniting something deep within. I closed my eyes, focusing on the love I had for my brother, the memories we shared, and the support of my friends. The light erupted like a supernova, and the shadows recoiled, shrieking as they dissolved into vapor. The clearing fell silent, the oppressive darkness lifting like a thick fog. I opened my eyes, panting, the weight of the confrontation settling heavily on my chest. The woman was gone, her laughter replaced by a haunting stillness. "Did we win?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling as she looked around. I could see the exhaustion etched on their faces, the toll it had taken on all of us. "I think so," I replied, but uncertainty gnawed at me. The forest was eerily quiet, too quiet, as if it were holding its breath, but even as relief washed over us, I felt a lingering presence. The trees whispered around us, their rustling leaves almost taunting. There were still secrets buried deep within, and the knowledge gnawed at my mind. "Oren," Marcus said, his voice low. "What about your brother?" I glanced at him, the weight of his question heavy. "I don't know, but I feel like this isn't over." As we turned to leave the clearing, I noticed something glinting on the ground, half buried in leaves. I knelt down, brushing away the dirt to reveal a small silver locket, my brother's. My heart sank, and I felt the shadows stir once more, as if they carried his memory, refusing to let go. "We have to go back," I said, gripping the locket tightly. "There's more to uncover. This isn't just about us anymore." The forest seemed to shift around us, a reminder that our battle was far from over. The path ahead was uncertain, but as we stepped away from the clearing, I knew one thing for sure: the darkness would always call to me, but I would answer with light. And as our footsteps echoed through the trees, I felt the weight of new mysteries pressing in, ready to be unveiled in the shadows of the woods. As I clutched the locket, a deep chill coursed through me, and the shadows began to gather once more, coalescing into two distinct forms. They twisted and warped, taking on the shapes of my brother and the woman who had tormented us. The air was thick with tension, and I realized I was faced with a choice, two equally terrible paths laid out before me. The first shadow, my brother, beckoned me with a familiar warmth. "Oren," he called, his voice echoing like a haunting melody. "Join me. Together we can conquer this darkness and reclaim our home. Just leave them behind." But the second shadow, the woman, slithered closer, her laughter a sinister whisper. "Why waste your time on them? Embrace the power I offer. You can become something greater, an eternal force of darkness, unmatched and unstoppable." I could feel the pull of both options, each promising a resolution, yet both were steeped in dread. "No," I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. "I won't abandon them," but the shadows grew insistent, wrapping around my mind like vines determined to choke the light. I felt my heart wavering, torn between the love for my brother and the intoxicating allure of power. In that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. It was a choice that would seal not just my fate, but theirs as well. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my decision pressing down. "I choose." The words hung in the air, trembling with uncertainty. As I opened my mouth to speak, the world around me began to fracture, the shadows swirling into a tempest, threatening to consume everything. The choice was mine, but the consequences were unknown, and just like that, everything shattered into darkness. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story. What if the stories we dismiss as mere folklore hold deeper truths lurking just beyond the veil of our understanding? As I stood in the heart of Rocky Mountain National Park, the moon casting its silvery glow over the towering pines, that question gnawed at me like a stubborn shadow. I had chosen this life among the trails, seeking solace in nature's embrace, but comfort turned to dread on that fateful night. During my last check of the perimeter, an eerie stillness enveloped the woods, almost as if the forest itself was holding its breath. But then, from a distance, a sound pierced the silence. A man's desperate cry echoing through the trees. It was a sound that froze me in place, sending a chill down my spine. When I finally found the source, I stumbled upon a scene that would forever alter my perception of reality. In a moonlit clearing, A man writhed on the ground, his body marred by deep claw marks, while a frantic look of terror painted his face. He was being hunted, and what stalked him was no mere animal. As I approached cautiously, every instinct screamed at me to turn back. But curiosity, that insatiable beast, propelled me forward. The man's eyes locked onto mine, pleading for help as he whispered fragmented tales of a shadow that twisted between the trees, something that blended human and beast, a creature born from nightmares. I could hardly process what I was witnessing. This wasn't just an attack. It was a harbinger of something far more sinister. I had always been skeptical of the local legends. Growing up in Estes Park, I had heard the stories of cursed beings and transformations whispered around campfires and in the hushed tones of my childhood friends. Yet the tales that once seemed like fanciful myths now loomed over me, heavy and foreboding. The old folks spoke of souls imprisoned in a cycle of torment under the moonlight, and I had dismissed them as mere tales meant to frighten the young. Yet as I stood there, the weight of reality pressed down on me. What if these stories were warnings, not fantasies? The attack marked the beginning of my descent into a world I had only brushed against in the comfort of daylight. As I pieced together the fragments of that night, I began to uncover unsettling signs. Giant paw prints that seemed to melt into the earth, cryptic symbols carved into ancient trees, and other visitors who had vanished without a trace. Each clue suggested a connection to something deeply rooted in the land, something that had been festering for generations, waiting for the right moment to emerge. In my search for answers, I stumbled upon a horrifying revelation. The curse was tied to the very bloodlines of those who dwelled in the region. The possibility that the legendary werewolf was not merely the stuff of nightmares, but a tangible reality, sent shivers through my core. Was I to be implicated in this dark legacy? Could I too be marked by this ancestral curse? Each question spiraled into deeper uncertainty, forcing me to confront my own lineage and the possibility of a shared fate. As the moon rose higher, illuminating the forest in a haunting glow, I found myself at a crossroads. Would I summon the courage to confront this ancient horror, risking everything I held dear? Or would I turn away, allowing the shadows to claim more innocent lives? But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. As I stood there, the man's terrified gaze bore into mine, and I felt a surge of determination mixed with dread. I knelt beside him, urging him to speak. "What did you see?" I asked, my voice trembling. He hesitated, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "The shadow," he managed to whisper. "It wasn't just a wolf. It was something else." His eyes darted to the trees as if expecting the creature to emerge at any moment. "It took my brother. I tried to run, but it was faster. It knows these woods better than we do." At that moment, a rustling sound broke through the stillness, and I instinctively turned, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. The man's grip tightened around my arm, and I could feel the sweat pooling in my palms. This was no ordinary night. I had stepped into a nightmare that was clawing its way into the waking world. Just then, a voice broke through the tension. "Is he okay?" I turned to see a woman emerging from the shadows, her silhouette framed by the pale moonlight. She was tall, with dark hair cascading down her shoulders, and her eyes, sharp and discerning, were fixed on the injured man. "I heard him scream," she continued, her tone urgent, yet calm. "We need to get him to safety." The man shook his head, panic flashing across his face. "No, it's not safe. It's out there." He pointed toward the trees, and I felt the air grow colder, as if the very woods were conspiring against us. "Listen to me," the woman said, stepping closer. "I'm not here to hurt you. My name is Alara. I've been tracking it for weeks. We need to move, now." I hesitated, torn between instinct and fear. Alara was a stranger, but her presence felt oddly reassuring. Maybe she was my best chance at understanding what was happening. "What do you know about it?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She glanced at the man on the ground, then back at me, her expression grave. More than I'd like. I've seen what it can do. It's not just a beast. It's a manifestation of the darkness that lurks in these woods, and it's hungry. I looked down at the injured man, whose breathing had grown shallow. We can't leave him, I said, desperation creeping into my voice. Then, we need to make a stand here, Ilara replied, pulling a hunting knife from her belt. I've set traps around the perimeter, but we need to fortify our position. If we don't confront it, it will keep hunting us, one by one. The weight of her words settled heavily in the air. I felt the thrill of fear coursing through me, but also an ember of resolve igniting within. What do we do? I asked, ready to fight against the shadows that threatened to engulf us. First, we have to bind his wounds, she instructed, kneeling beside the man. I'll need your help. Then, we prepare for what's coming. As I tore strips from my shirt to use as makeshift bandages, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The forest felt alive, each rustle of leaves a reminder of the unseen predator lurking just beyond our sight. Why are you doing this? I asked Ilara, seeking to understand her motivations, her resolve. She paused, her hands deftly working. To stabilize the man's injuries. I've lost people to this thing, she replied quietly, her voice betraying a hint of sorrow. I won't let anyone else suffer like I did. This is personal. Her words struck a chord deep within me. I had always sought solitude in nature, but now it felt like nature was confronting me with its darkest truths. The emotional weight of our shared plight began to settle over me, and I realized that we were bound together by a common goal: survival. As the last rays of twilight faded, the forest darkened, shrouding us in a thick veil of uncertainty. I could sense the tension building, the anticipation of the hunt that would soon begin. In the silence, I heard it, a low growl that sent shivers down my spine, echoing through the trees, growing closer with each passing moment. Prepare yourself, Ilara whispered, her eyes locked on the shadows. It's coming. And in that moment, I understood that whatever was lurking in the darkness had already changed us, drawing us into a twisted dance of fate that we could not escape. As I knelt beside the injured man, my heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing the primally fear coursing through my veins. Ilara's presence was both a comfort and a source of tension, and the air crackled with an energy that felt almost supernatural. I tore the last strip of fabric from my shirt and pressed it against the man's wound, but my mind was racing, grappling with the enormity of what we faced. The low growl reverberated through the trees, and I suddenly felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. The shadows seemed to pulse and shift, and for a fleeting moment, I was not in the woods, but in a different place altogether, a memory long buried. I was a child again, hiding under my bed while my parents argued. The same chilling sense of dread enveloped me, the same feeling of being hunted, but by something more insidious than mere beasts. Focus. Ilara snapped, her voice pulling me back to the present. Her intensity was palpable. We need to finish this, it's almost here. But the darkness had seeped into my thoughts, and I felt my grip on reality slipping. What if it's not? Just a creature? I blurted out, my words tumbling into the night like scattered leaves. What if it's something else? Something we can't fight? Ilara's brow furrowed, and I could see doubt flicker in her eyes. What do you mean? I hesitated, the memories swirling. When I was a kid, I would hear stories, things my parents tried to keep from me, about sacrifices made in these woods, about a darkness that feeds on fear. I always thought they were just tales, but what if they were real? The man groaned, bringing us back to his suffering. You don't understand, he gasped. It's not just a creature. It takes what you fear most and uses it against you. I felt a chill spread through me as the implications of his words sank in. Was this creature somehow connected to my childhood fears? Did it draw power from the memories I had tried so hard to forget? Suddenly, Ilara's expression shifted, her eyes widening as she turned to look deeper into the woods. "It's here," she whispered, her voice trembling. Before I could respond, the air thickened with an intense energy, and I felt a presence unlike anything I had ever known. A weight that pressed down on me, like the forest itself had come alive, its roots digging into my mind. I could almost see it, a shadowy figure lurking just beyond the reach of the moonlight, a silhouette that seemed to hum with a dark, malevolent energy. Then, in a heartbeat, the growl morphed into something far worse. A voice. "Did you really think you could escape me?" It taunted, a chilling sound that wrapped around my thoughts like a serpent. I stumbled back, grappling with the reality of its words. It wasn't just hunting us, it was hunting me, my past, my fears, the very essence of my being. "Stay close," Elora commanded, but I was already lost in my mind, spiraling down a rabbit hole of terror and revelation. The man's breathing quickened, and I could see his eyes darting back and forth, reflecting the same fear I felt inside. "It knows us," he whispered, horror etched across his face. I glanced back at Alara, who was now poised for a fight, her knife gleaming in the pale light. "What does it want?" I asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. "Everything," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around us. "And it will use everything you've ever feared against you." In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a reckoning with my past, a confrontation with the very darkness that had shaped me. And as the shadows closed in, I prepared to face not only the creature lurking in the woods, but the ghosts that had haunted me for so long. The darkness pressed in around us thick as fog, and I felt the weight of my fears coiling around my throat. It was as if the shadows themselves were alive, feeding off the dread that churned inside me. As I steadied my breath, I could hear Elara's heart racing alongside mine, the tension between us palpable. "Stay sharp," she barked, her grip tightening on the knife. "We have to keep it at bay until we figure out how to fight it." But how could I fight something that thrived on my deepest fears? The growling voice echoed in my mind, a twisted reflection of every nightmare I had ever faced. I could almost see it now, a figure that flickered at the edges of my vision, teasing me with glimpses of my past. A childhood spent cowering from shadows, a home filled with echoes of anger and despair. "Do you think you can confront me?" It hissed, its voice slithering through the trees. "You can't escape your memories. They will always be your prison." "No!" I screamed, the defiance bursting forth from the depths of my soul. "You don't own me!" Elara shot me a look of surprise, her expression shifting as if she were seeing me for the first time. "That's it! Remember that strength," she urged, her eyes brightening with recognition. "You're not that scared child anymore." But just as I felt a flicker of hope, the shadows surged forward, and with them came the man's pained gasp. "It's changing!" he cried, clutching his wound. "It's feeding off your fear." I turned to him, desperation clawing at my throat. "What do we do?" The man's gaze locked onto mine, and in that moment I saw a flicker of something. Understanding. Perhaps? Face it. You have to confront the darkness, not just for yourself, but for all of us. The words struck me like lightning. He was right. This wasn't just my battle, it was ours. I felt a surge of determination rising within me, a familiar fire igniting in the pit of my stomach. "Stay with me," I shouted, my voice rising above the encroaching darkness. "We'll fight this together." Elara nodded, her resolve solidifying. "We'll break its hold. It can't defeat us if we stand united." But just as we began to form a plan, a flash of movement caught my eye. From the shrouded depths of the trees, another figure emerged, tall and twisted, its features obscured. By the night, it was another man, his face gaunt and hollow, eyes glinting with a malevolent hunger. "Fools," he laughed, a chilling sound that sliced through the air. "You think you can challenge the darkness? You're merely feeding it." I felt a new wave of panic wash over me as the shadows closed in tighter, swallowing the light around us. But I couldn't give in. Not now. "Remember," I shouted, locking eyes with Elara and the injured man. "This is our choice. We will not be consumed. We will fight back." As I stepped forward, heart pounding, I felt the power of our shared defiance surging through me. The darkness recoiled, hesitating for just a moment, and I seized that opportunity. "Together," I cried, and in that pivotal moment, I felt a connection with Alara and the man, three souls uniting against the encroaching abyss. But as we braced ourselves for the confrontation, I knew the real battle was just beginning. Would we be strong enough to face the creature and the shadows of our past? The shadows lunged forward, a writhing mass of darkness that sought to engulf us. I felt the cold tendrils brush against my skin, trying to siphon away my resolve, but I clung to my determination like a lifeline. "Now!" I shouted, and we thrust our combined strength against the encroaching void. The moment our energies collided, a blinding light erupted from within us, illuminating the night in a fierce blaze that pushed back the shadows. I could feel the heat radiating from Alara and the injured man like a beacon of hope against the consuming darkness. For an instant, I believed we might succeed, but the darkness was not so easily vanquished. It screamed, a horrid cacophony that rattled my bones as if it were being torn apart by our light. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to stand firm as pain shot through me. I glanced at Alara, her expression a mixture of terror and fierce determination, and I knew we had to hold on. In that moment of unity, I could see the shadows retreating, but they were also shifting, morphing into something else, something more sinister. The twisted figure that had mocked us earlier began to dissolve, revealing the faces of those we had lost, their eyes wide with pain and sorrow. I staggered back as memories flooded over me, each one a reminder of my past failures, my regrets. "No," I cried out, but it was too late. The darkness surged again, and I felt its icy grip tighten around my heart. With one final push, we screamed our defiance as a wave of light erupted from us, scorching the shadows and forcing them back into the depths from whence they came. The last echoes of the darkness dissipated into the night, leaving us panting and trembling, but alive. I collapsed to my knees, gasping for breath, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle over me. Alara knelt beside me, her face streaked with dirt and tears, but her eyes sparkled with a fierce light. "We did it," she whispered, a mixture of disbelief and hope in her voice. The injured man, however, was not so fortunate. He lay slumped against a tree, his face pale and drawn. I can't hold on much longer," he rasped, clutching his side where blood seeped through his fingers. Panic surged through me as I reached for him, but he shook his head, a faint smile crossing his lips. "You've broken the cycle. That's what matters." I felt a knot form in my throat. "No, we can help you." But he merely closed his eyes, the light fading from his face. "Live. Find the truth. There are more shadows to confront." Alara and I exchanged a glance, understanding the weight of his final words. This was not the end. The darkness had retreated, but it had not vanished entirely. As we stood, the forest around us felt eerily silent, the air heavy with unspoken questions. What had we truly unleashed? The shadows may have been pushed back, but I sensed remnants lingering, waiting for another opportunity to strike. "Let's get out of here," I said, my voice shaky but resolute. "We need to figure out what this means." Together we stumbled through the underbrush, the weight of our scars heavy on our hearts. Ilara's hand found mine, a silent promise that we would face whatever came next together. But as we reached the edge of the clearing, my gaze caught on something glinting in the dirt, a small obsidian shard pulsing with an unnatural energy. I hesitated, a chill skittering down my spine. What had we missed? As we turned to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation was merely the beginning. Shadows lingered in the corners of my mind, and I knew that the darkness would return. It always did. The obsidian shard pulsed in the moonlight, drawing me in like a moth to a flame. Ilara's grip tightened around my hand, anchoring me to reality. "Don't touch it," she warned, her voice laced with fear. But the pull was overwhelming, a whispering promise of power and understanding that I couldn't ignore. As I knelt, To inspect the shard, two paths unfolded before me, each one shadowed and fraught with peril. The first beckoned, a chance to harness the darkness, to command it and use its power to protect those I loved. But I knew the cost. Every ounce of light within me would be extinguished, leaving only the cold void in its place. The second path was equally grim. I could destroy the shard, severing its connection to the realm of shadows. Yet in doing so, I would sacrifice Ilara, the only person who had stood by me through this nightmare. I could feel the weight of her presence beside me, her heart beating steady and strong, but I couldn't ignore the grim reality of our choices. "Choose," the darkness murmured, its voice like sandpaper against my soul. "Will you grasp the power of the void, or will you let the light fade forever?" I felt the tears welling in my eyes, the desperation clawing at my heart. I could feel the darkness waiting, hungry for my decision. The shadows were patient, always lurking, and I understood that whatever choice I made would reverberate through time, haunting us both. My voice cracked, the weight of the decision nearly crushing me, but the moment stretched, and I knew I couldn't delay. I had to decide. In that heartbeat of silence, I looked at Ilara, her eyes wide with fear and understanding, and I knew I had to choose between my own salvation and hers. The shadows shifted, and with them, my fate hung in the balance. As I took a deep breath, I felt the warmth of Ilara's hand slipping from mine, and in that instant, the ground shook with the weight of my heart-wrenching decision, and just like that, the darkness surged forth, swallowing the light. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. Leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story.